A very good evening to you. I am Ryan Broom with the Thursday, March 1st edition of the CBC Evening News. In our top story, a St. Michael community was on lockdown this morning after a dispute over a dead bird. That turned bloody. Kareem Smith was on the scene and filed this report.
An argument over a dead fowl has landed one man in hospital and another in handcuffs. It all played out right here along Phillips Road at around 9:30 this morning.
I smelled this thing for 2 or 3 days, but I didn't know it was a dead fowl. It was a dead rat on it here. And they started quarreling. Then I went down back and started making dress there upon the machine. And then I hear this, he run, Jason with 2 rocks, and Jason run from him, gone up the hill road. Then I say he better come out to defend. We better have 2 rocks too. And he run outside with a cutlass and run it down between there. I'm gonna get him there, but he can't. I saw the boy there laying down with his head chopped loose.
People living there say Jason Goodrich was involved in the fight with an unnamed man. When his brother, Ryan Tollop Goodrich, intervened, he was chopped multiple times in his head and neck as the fight moved on to the adjoining Pine East-West Boulevard.
Sad. Should never happen so. Should never gone so far. Should never happen like that.
This man's blood-stained clothes were the result of efforts to save the victim's life. He didn't want to be identified, but said the injured man was taken to hospital by car. Up to news time, he was in stable condition, and the man accused of attacking him is now assisting police in their investigations. Kareem Smith, CBC News.
Thanks, Kareem. Well, recent amendments to the Road Traffic Act have generated much concern among the population, and the Barbados Road Safety Association will be playing a part in educating residents about the legislation. The BRSA will be doing so through a road safety campaign focusing on distracted driving. According to President Charmaine Rowland Bowen, the campaign will be conducted this month and in April.
During that campaign, we will be sensitizing and educating all road users as it pertains to the dangers and the importance of the cell phone, the banning of cell phone, handheld cell phone act. And we will be giving information through a number of print media and also CBC television and radio and online as well. We will be sensitizing persons where we have produced some brochures, answering questions, frequently asked questions or questions to educate and make persons become more aware of the dangers of cell phone use so that they would be more compliant.
An expansion of the local dairy sector and a reduction in milk imports. That's the aim of government's imposition of a cess on condensed milk, flavored milk, and milk-based beverages and substitutes imported or processed on the island. Labour Minister Senator Dr. Esther Bayer-Suku reinforced the point during debate in the Upper House.
A subsidy would be paid directly to farmers based on their supply. So it is proposed that there would be this subsidy that would allow them to produce a higher volume of milk at a mutually desirable price, because at the end of the day, that is what it's all about for the farmers. And it would allow then a reduction of imports and ultimately an increase in the export also of milk and an expansion of the local dairy farm.
If an independent senator had his way, government would not only affirm the 10% tax placed on sugar-sweetened beverages in the last budget, but it would put another 20% on top of it. Senator Sir Henry Fraser, who is also a prominent doctor, says this is the only way to guarantee that the tax reaps the benefit of steering people away from these beverages. He says it is critical at a time when there has been an explosion in the number of people, especially teenagers, with chronic non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and others.
For a $4 drink, 10% is 40 cents. And most Barbadians now don't concern themselves with any coinage less than a silver dollar. People literally ignore the dimes and the nickels and the 25-cent pieces. And therefore that 40 cent increase, according to the feedback I have had from 2 supermarkets and others that I deal with, banks themselves, the marketing people there, and so on, it would not appear that there has been much of an impact on consumption.
Meantime, Government Senator Jepter Ince fully supports the financing of the sugar industry. He, however, believes that sugar workers have not been seeing the returns of their labor, and he says the industry must be restructured.
There are persons, Madam President, who get fat out of the inefficiencies of government. There are persons who don't want inefficiencies to become efficient, because once the inefficiencies remain, they will continue to be overrated. And these inefficiencies that are in the industry cannot continue. We must draw the line and make some decisions. But at the end of the day, the ones who carry the burdens, the workers are the ones who carry the burden. They, Madam President, they are the ones that must benefit.
We stay on the political scene and hear that the opposition Barbados Labour Party has outlined its plans to start fixing the problem on the South Coast. Leader Mia Mottley says within a week of being elected, the BLP would declare the situation a national emergency and close down the food businesses that are in the immediately impacted area. This would also come with a system to pay workers for 4 to 8 weeks, which would supplement the unemployment payments the workers would receive from the National Insurance Scheme. Speaking during a press conference at Opposition Office, Ms. Mottley also said the party would work along with tourism officials to relocate visitors staying on the South Coast to other hotels or private accommodation if they wanted to move.
What we don't want is people leaving Barbados with the clear understanding that we did not care what their experience as tourists was and that we were not prepared to reach out. So that in the same way that we have taken the decision to protect all Barbadians by reason of closing the food establishments, and of course the government has already taken the decision to keep St. Lawrence Primary closed, which we support, we feel that we would continue therefore to ensure that those who have visited in those affected areas until we can resolve the problem over the next 2-3 months are immediately given an option of moving elsewhere on the island.
And regarding the actual faulty treatment plant, she says they would rely on Barbados's long relationship with Canada to try to find a fix, as well as to sanitize the area at least 3 or 4 times daily. The opposition leader also told the media they would also urgently purchase a set of bioreactor units, which can be reused once the immediate problem is resolved.
These membrane bioreactor units will allow for treated water to emanate from the sewage, but they're modular, and more importantly, we will be able to use these same modular units in a full new treatment plant, or indeed at Bridgetown, which is already proven to be overloaded from recent reports. Now, these units can be purchased and delivered, I'm told, within 2 to 3 months. They don't give us a full treatment plant, but they start the process of carrying what we have to a greater level of treatment.
Ms. Mottley further says the BLP would have to wait until it assumes office to say what is available to be spent on fixing the sewage crisis. She adds that while they do not have a precise figure, the cost of doing nothing is far greater than what it takes to fix the issue. Well, we have more news right after the break. Welcome back. Well, work on the Barbados Youth Service's long-awaited permanent home is underway. This morning, Youth Minister Stephen Lashley broke ground at Paragon in Christchurch, where the facility will be based. He says it will be able to facilitate interventions for at-risk youth and school leavers. Ariane Phillips tells us more.
The Barbados Youth Service will be able to accept more recruits when its new home is completed.
The facility will accommodate 120 persons per intake, with 2 intakes per year, catering to 240 persons per year. The Barbados Youth Service will therefore now be in a position to satisfy the demand of its program.
Construction of the Christchurch facility will be carried out in 2 phases. The first, which is set to be completed in June this year, will cost over $700,000. Phase 2 will be completed next year and has a price tag of over $6 million.
Phase 2 of the project will include the following, and I'll refer to them in order: the construction of the classroom block, construction of consulting block, the construction of the general storeroom and maintenance block, construction of the boys dormitory block A, the construction of boys dormitory block B, the construction of the girls dormitory block.
Director of the Youth Service, Hallie Haynes, is pleased to see the project started. He says the lack of a permanent location was a major concern for many years.
The issue of a permanent home for the Barbecue Service has been a hot topic for several years among many of our stakeholders, including our trainees. Let me say that at each and every graduation ceremony over the last 10 years, this issue was raised by our graduates.
The project is expected to be completed in June 2019. The Barbados Youth Service was originally based at Harrison Point in St. Lucie, but was uprooted to house inmates following the 2005 fire at Glenderry Prison. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Thanks, Rianne. Well, employers are once again being encouraged to provide opportunities for students with intellectual challenges. President of the Learning Center, Reverend Dr. Joseph Tudor, made the appeal as the school marked its 40th anniversary. Again, Rianne Phillips tells us more.
While students are integrated into the wider society after leaving the Learning Center, finding a job is very hard. President of the Learning Center, Reverend Dr. Joseph Tudor, believes more opportunities should be available.
And we have to learn in this society not to disrespect disabled persons, because you know why? They do a tremendous job. But from the time employers here disabled, they draw a line and say no. But you know what? Time has come for that to change. Because over 40 years, we have produced a lot of students that perform at very, very high levels in the society, and they must be given a chance.
Mr. Tudor says the students are intelligent and have mastered several skills.
You've seen the skill, the focus of these children when they are coming to do whichever job they're doing. You saw the ones with the head. We do it plaiting all the hair, the barber, the guys in the word work class. There's a computer lab where many of the students are very, very literate with the computer. Some of them are incidentally very, very bright, exceptionally bright, but they're autistic and they can give a lot of, the mood swing is very fast.
He was speaking at the school's joint anniversary and African Day celebrations, attended by Governor General Dame Sandra Mason. Students mounted art, craft and food displays for the occasion. They also danced and sang during a short cultural presentation. Afterwards, Dame Sandra met some of the students and toured the school. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Thanks, Rianne. Well, the region continues to face serious risk from extreme weather and climate. This is according to Principal of the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, Dr. David Farrell. He says with constant changes in the weather patterns, the collection of data remains critical to adequately preparing for hurricanes, especially where buildings are concerned.
We only need to look back at last year. We can look back the year before that. We can look back at the year before that and see the loss of life, the impact to communities across the region day in and day out. People have lost their homes. People have been forced to move from their homes. Communities have been abandoned. And this is a real problem for all of us, not just individuals, but as we see in some countries have had to take on the burden for other countries and so on in the region, and this is taxing to everyone.
Mr. Farrell was speaking during the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the Institute and the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. The United States Agency for International Development is funding a major project which will see about 50 stations being placed across the region for the sole purpose of collecting data. Assistant Executive Director of the Center, Dr. Mark Bino, says the project is critical.
It is essential that the nearly $700,000 US spent on instrumentation to encourage better early warning systems and data capture for more effective development planning and decision making be properly maintained and utilized. The steps being taken, therefore, are paramount towards building a cadre of persons necessary to catalyze the information utilization ethos for decision making and to move from the position of data collection to information dissemination and application.
A positive alternative for at-risk youth. That's what President of the Barbados Skating Association believes a spanking new skate park will provide. Our Kareem Smith was at the groundbreaking ceremony and filed this report.
After years without a home, skateboarders in Barbados finally have a place to call their own. A US $1.4 million donation by the Maria Holder Memorial Trust made the dream a reality, along with an agreement from the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports to make that home the Wildy Gymnasium. But President of the Skateboarding Association of Barbados, Paul Wilson, says at a time when youth violence appears at an all-time high, the National Skate Park will form an integral part of the goal of effecting change in communities which have bad reputations.
I like to tell people I come from the point where people sometimes don't even want to go, and I had friends that, hey, you could give me a ride home from skating, and they're like, where you live? And the point is like, or I could drop you down by Bossa. I'd be like, yeah, it's okay, you know. So these are things that I want to go back in these communities and give back some of what I learned from skateboarding.
Meanwhile, Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth Stephen Lashley says that ministry is committed to the sport.
We are acutely aware of the rapidly growing interest by our young people in the sport of skateboarding, as well as the challenges you would have faced with respect to finding a home for your sport. I'm also aware that in your efforts to advance skateboarding in Barbados, you had created a do-it-yourself facility at Graham Hall that was demolished, and as I understand it, as a consequence of some legal challenges.
Work will commence in April, and the planned skate park will be constructed by a world-renowned expert. It gives youth yet another opportunity to immerse themselves in something positive. Kareem Smith, CBC News.
Thanks, Kareem. Well, we take another break here, but still to come, a look at some of the stories making headlines across the region. Welcome back. Well, topping news from the region tonight. Farmers and fisherfolk in Dominica have been told by the Ministry of Agriculture that financial assistance being offered after the passage of Hurricane Maria is not compensation for their losses. We hear more in this report from Marpine Television.
In January, the ministry announced that an $18 million grant would be distributed to farmers and fisherfolk who fall within particular categories to assist with their recovery post-Hurricane Maria. Since the distribution of the funds, which also began in January, the two groups of people set to benefit from the monies have been making numerous complaints about the grant payout, including the amount of money being disbursed. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, $10,000 would be given to those who fall in the category of large commercial farmers and fisherfolk, $3,000 each to small commercial farmers and fisherfolk, and $1,000 to those who do not fall in either of the categories. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Dr. Reginald Thomas, reiterated that the money being given to the farmers and fisherfolk is not compensation, but rather a social response to the effects of Hurricane Maria.
It is not compensation. This was never intended to be compensation. So for the farmer to say, I lost, it was not compensation. It was a social response to Hurricane Maria. It was intended to assist people who have lost their livelihoods. So hence all the discussion about people that have alternately employed, it was intended to support the livelihoods, as you may, of these individuals, not compensation. So farmers may decide that I've lost $100,000 and therefore I deserve it. It is not compensation, never intended to be compensation.
Another of the complaints is that some names do not appear on the list of those to benefit from the grant money. Thomas explained that the distribution of money is ongoing and there are factors which may have led to names not being on the list.
Some people were inevitably left out of the reasons we will have to find out. The information that was collected on the ground was put through a database. That database generated a list. Which was actually used for payment. So it wasn't done by hand, it was actually done through the database that was presented. Some people got left out, and we recognized that there would have been mistakes, so we had made contingency for that. One, through the complaints mechanism, but also resources that would cover where mistakes may have happened.
In Antigua, the number of patients with severe chronic kidney disease has increased within the last 2 years. As of January this year, there were 91 patients, 59 males and 32 females at the Mount St. John's dialysis unit. This is in comparison to the same period last year when there were 72 patients. Non-communicable disease coordinator with the Ministry of Health, Nurse Valerie Williams, says the increase is due to lifestyle practices. She added that a lack of regular medical checkups is another contributing factor, which causes the disease to get to its final stage, which can result in death. There are 3 stages of kidney disease: mild, moderate, and severe. When it is mild and moderate, there are no obvious signs and symptoms. It is only detectable through blood and urine tests. Individuals are admitted to the dialysis unit when the disease has reached its final stage. Well, 3 men have been held in connection with the illegal meat trade in Jamaica. The trio was held by the predial larceny unit, as we hear from TVJ.
The men who were arrested have not been named, but the police say they held them on Monday in the Waltham Park Road area with meat weighing over 1,000 pounds. The police say intelligence led them to the area. The Public Health Department was called in to assess which animal the meat was from.
We seized 10 bags of what we believe to be beef. However, we cannot determine specifically at this point if it is actually beef. Neither can the public health personnel at this point. However, the meat was inspected. It was deemed unfit for human consumption by the Kingston and St. Andrew public health personnel.
The meat was disposed of by public health officials. The police say it was being prepared for sale. They have this warning for the public.
I'm using this opportunity again to say to the public, ensure that when you purchase meat, you purchase from reputable sources. As a matter of fact, not only meat, but any sort of agricultural produce.
The police say they are continuing the investigation to determine the source of the meat and the different distribution points.
Tighter controls are being put in place along the Guyana-Venezuela border. The move is in an effort to protect Guyanese.
The Guyana Defense Force was instructed to take certain precautions. They're not aggressive, they are purely defensive. And we have designated certain villages along the border. Whitewater is one, Baramita is another, Kaikan, Arau, to ensure that our citizens are safe. We're concerned with the safety of our citizens. And in that regard, I don't think there should be any deep concern. We have planned, in fact, at the Defense Board meeting, which was held last Thursday, I've instructed that the Guyana Defense Force should brief the Parliamentary Committee on Security to let them know what preparations are taking place. And I expect that there will be full participation both by members of the government side and the opposition side.
Venezuela's neighbors are grappling with a mounting influx of desperate migrants fleeing a worsening economic crisis in that country. Guyana's head of state assured that the deployment of more troops to frontline villages is not to initiate any form of aggression.
We are concerned with the situation in Venezuela, and that is not a stable situation. And it is in part a response to the Venezuelan problem because there has been a surge in crime, there has been a surge in illegal migration, and with it may come, gun running. There has been a surge in the return of Guyanese from Venezuela. So in a sense, the complaint about recency is quite relevant because the whole situation in Venezuela is itself recent. But it has alerted us to the need to make sure that our border location, these frontline villages, are not isolated. And we have to do much more work in years to come in developing communication, developing infrastructure, make sure children go to school, all of the services that I've been speaking about over the last 3 years. That is, we must erase the differences between coastland and hinterland.
Particularly Residents of Arau up the Wenemu River had complained bitterly to Nightly News about the presence of unfriendly Venezuelan gangs, more so the sindicatos.
Government is deeply concerned, and government is continuing to deliver services to the communities, health services, communications, security services. There have been complaints about pensions. Everything we're looking at, it's a total responsibility. It is not being left to one ministry. There's an interministerial response to the issues of isolation. As you know, these are remote areas, not neglected areas, but remote areas because of the problems of communication.
Well, a glimpse into the world of sports is just ahead with Damian Best, but first, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Anti-doping rule violations number 6. Doping is defined as the possession of a banned substance and/or method. This fact is brought to you compliments the National Anti-Doping Commission.